You best believe the Atlanta Falcons are the kings of the NFC South. I'm Aaron Freeman, your host here on Locked On Falcons. Today, I am joined by Mike Rothstein, who covers the Falcons for ESPN. And we're going to tell you why this Falcon team is believing in itself and its quarterback now that they're in first place in the division.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Sirius Black, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. your very humble host here of this illustrious Locked On Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Falcons is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. So, guys, we thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen. Of course, it's free and available Monday through Friday on a variety of podcast platforms, including on YouTube. Make sure you give us a like, hit that bell, and when you do, you'll get the video version of the podcast the night before the audio drops. So, with all that to say, guys, let's jump into my conversation with Mike Rothstein, which I had on Monday morning before I had gotten some caffeine in my system. Now I'm fully caffeinated now that I'm coming at you a little bit later in the day. But let's jump into that conversation right now with Mike Rothstein. All right, everyone, you are Locked On Falcons, and I am joined by another illustrious guest.
You sound like me, Aaron. I'm on like 3 hours sleep, my man.
Illustrious guest in Mike Rothstein. You see him cover the Falcons. Yeah, it's early. I've had already a couple calls. I need to clearly get a second one in before recording this episode. But Mike covers the Falcons for ESPN. He's got his own podcast. He's trying to do the daily thing, but he hasn't quite caught up with me on From the Perch. On that front,
I have no interest. I only do the daily thing during training camp, Aaron. And the draft. I have no interest in doing a daily podcast otherwise with my other responsibilities. It's just not realistic.
Well, Mike, I want to talk about what was a crazy game on Sunday for the Falcons, winning against the Carolina Panthers in overtime. It seemed like both teams did their best to try to lose this game multiple times at the end. And try to win it and failed. But I guess the question I have to ask you, is it better to be lucky than good? Is that what are we at with that?
I mean, that's how I've lived my life, right? Like, that's how I've gotten ESPN. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. No, I do think sometimes it is better to be lucky than good. Well, let's take the example of Mega Millions and Powerball right now. Like, was it $1 billion again, one of them? Like, yeah. It's not like you're good to do that, but if you win, you're dang lucky. Yeah, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I think that you saw a lot of that on Sunday with the Falcons where, yeah, they got lucky that Eddie Pinheiro, who's usually a pretty reliable kicker, got a case of the yips, like, out of nowhere. Like, literally out of nowhere this happens. And, I was the one who asked Arthur Smith about, well, like, freezing the kicker never works anymore. Like, that just doesn't happen. That's like some college stuff. And he's like, it's the only thing I had left. And then I asked him, well, did you think it would work? And he just kind of like smiled. He was like, of course I thought, there's no way. You don't, on a 32-yard field goal? Like, no, I mean, that should be made. Like, the Falcons got very lucky, but the other part of that is, frankly, the Panthers got really lucky too. I mean, that throw from PJ Walker was the longest throw by air yards since Next Gen Stats started tracking air yards. Like, think about that for a second. That's since 2016. It was the longest throw. I talked to Dino and to Rashawn Evans, who were both in coverage on that play. after the game, and both of them told me, and it's in my story that's on ESPN.com, they didn't see the ball. Rashaan Evans didn't know that it was caught until he saw the Panthers celebrating. He's like, "Are you kidding me?" Dean Marlowe basically said, "Listen, my job was don't guard the sideline more than anything. Guard the sideline, make the tackle if they throw to him, because if that happens, game's over, because they needed a touchdown, so field goal doesn't matter, and they're going to have to run so far down the field, maybe they'll have 1 second to clock it. Maybe, if you get lucky, because he caught it with 12 seconds left. And, you have your whole team, including the linemen, sprinting 50 yards downfield and getting a play call. Like, there would have been a lot there that would have had to go exactly right for that to occur. So all of a sudden he saw DJ Moore go, and they just get DJ Moore's a good player too, but no one thinks PJ Walker is going to make that throw. We've never seen PJ Walker make that throw. I think it's a great throw. But yeah, I mean, like, Falcons shouldn't have been in that position in the first place because of a great play. Like, it was just wild. It was madness, Aaron. It was madness. What's the old Bill, dogs and cats living together? Ghostbusters line.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it was.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess a more serious question: what was your biggest takeaway from this game? What is the thing that we learned about the Falcons in this game? They're just a little bit more resilient, or a lot more resilient than we thought they were, or was there anything else?
I mean, the resiliency thing, Aaron, I don't think is new, but a lot of players talked about it after the game. And I think you saw that on another level. Truthfully, what I took from it is they might be the best overall team in the division. And I don't mean the most talented roster, because they are certainly not that. Like, not even close. I don't mean, I don't mean the best offense. I don't mean the best defense, because they're neither one of those things. They might be the best special teams. But I think overall they seem to complement each other well. And they seem to be buying into what Arthur Smith is selling. And they seem to be believing in one another. And they seem to genuinely like each other, I've been around locker rooms where you don't, or you hate the coaches. And all of that goes a long way in the fourth quarter and in overtime, because most of the teams in the NFL are fairly close talent-wise, right? There's maybe one or two teams that you're like, that's rough, and one or two teams that have, Bills-level talent, basically, or Cowboys-level talent, potentially, because of what we're seeing on their defense. Most of the teams are pretty much in the middle. Now, the Falcons, I think a lot of people thought would be on the back end of that, right? Like, I know you and I did a podcast. You look at this roster, like, they got almost $80 million in dead cap. They've got $9 million in cap space. Well, okay, how are they paying these players, to do this? So, Aaron, I don't know. I think we learned that they like each other and they play well together. And it's much like we've seen in almost every game except the Cincinnati game this year. They're kind of in this cardiac deal. And I covered a team in 2016 like this, the Lions. And they were a flawed team, by far a flawed team. But before Matthew Stafford gets hurt, they're 9-4 and leading the NFC North. And then Matthew Stafford's hand gets hurt and they lose their last 4 games, basically, limp into the playoffs and then lose a wild card. But they were more a sum of they were a better sum than the totality of their parts, if that makes sense. And I'm starting to get the feeling that this Falcons team might be the same way. There are clearly flaws, but they seem to work well together, and they're just very well coached.
Okay. Well, you talk about belief, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about whether we should start believing in Marcus Mariota and look at the strides that he in this passing game potentially made on Sunday. We'll get into that here with Mike Rothstein of ESPN. And before we get there, guys, I want to tell you about PrizePicks, a fun new way to play daily fantasy. Just pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. It can take less than 60 seconds. to enter. And the great thing about PrizePicks is you're not going against other people. It's you versus the projections. They offer projections on NFL, NBA, NHL, college football, so much more. PrizePicks is safe, it's fast, it's easy. It's currently in operation in over 30 states in the US and Canada. All you got to do, guys, is just download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That means if you deposit 100, PrizePicks will give you $100 to play with. Don't forget that promo code Locked On to sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. So here with Mike Rothstein of ESPN, and let's talk a little bit more about the belief that the Falcons have that they're a resilient team and increasing belief in Marcus Mariota. He actually, threw the ball more than 25 times in a game. Well, it's a Halloween miracle at this point in time. But Mariota did make strides in this game. I do feel like he did make some key throws down the stretch in this game to help this team put points on the board. It included a couple of nice runs where he was able to use his legs to extend plays. And that's been the area where I have consistently tried to praise Mariota, because I thought that was kind of the strength of his game, using his legs to extend plays, whether that's, running 30 yards down the field or buying time to hit those open receivers that come open late on the play. I'm curious, from your perspective, what were some of the strides that you saw Marcus Mariota make on Sunday?
Well, I don't know if it was a Halloween miracle, Aaron, as much as maybe it was a birthday gift to Marcus Mariota because he turned 29 yesterday. So maybe Arthur Smith gifted him with, hey, I'm going to let you throw. Maybe that's the game plan. So maybe Marcus Mariota needs to have birthdays every Sunday. I don't know. Maybe that's the key. That's the key here. But my thing with him is this. He is what you've in many ways expected him to be. The accuracy is great at certain points, and it's awful at certain points. And you had a microcosm of that within this game yesterday, because he started off terribly. Couldn't hit anything. And then he completed 11, 12 passes in a row and really kind of helped take control of the game. Like he's a little streaky in that aspect. But I think what we've learned about him is the way he plays the game helps Arthur Smith's offense, because instead of a guy who's a pocket guy or a guy who will run, but like kind of run in case of emergency type of situation, guys like a Matthew Stafford, guys like even an Aaron Rodgers to an extent, where it's like, they can run, but you would prefer it that they do not, because their arm strength is where it is. I think with Marcus Mariota, the running portion of that makes him harder to defend and makes the Falcons harder to defend, because they can run the zone read effectively. He's one of the better zone read quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, there's not a ton of them, right? But he's one of the better ones. And he also is really smart about when he's taking off. I think he's gotten a lot better with that. We're seeing more sliding from Marcus Mariota than we did in week 1 when he was playing very recklessly. So I think we're starting to see that from him. I think he's starting to get more comfortable in, okay, I'm a starting quarterback again. Okay, I don't necessarily have to worry about looking over my shoulder that I'm going to lose my job to a 3rd-round draft pick, because they're winning games. The fumbles have gone away on the whole. The Falcons had one yesterday, but it was Caleb Huntley, not Marcus Mariota. And yes, he threw 2 interceptions, but think about both of those interceptions, because I know people are going to want to, bang on him for that. They were on 2 deep passes. So they weren't like short pass where the read was bad. It was the one in overtime. He probably overthrew it a little bit, but I mean, DeMar Byrd just took, I think, a bad jumping, a bad dude, 5'7", like guy can only jump so high. Like he took a bad couple of steps to leading to that jump. And then the first ball was another deep one to Byrd, where again, you took a shot, you took a deep shot early in the game, and it wasn't going to hurt you. But the fact that we're starting to see that more, I think, is another sign of growth of this offense and growth of Mariota. And I'm really curious to see what this looks like once Cordarrelle Patterson comes back, because I think it's going to open up even more things for Mariota in this offense. But listen, it's halfway through the season. Every week on my podcast, like you mentioned, From the Perch, including the one that dropped today, I get questions. Well, is it Ridder time? When is Desmond Ridder going to start? even yesterday at the game, I don't know if this got caught on TV, Aaron, like they showed somebody in the stands and they were like all excited, and then they were holding a Desmond Ridder fathead head. I'm just, like, I get it. Desmond Ridder is an exciting new thing, but like Marcus Mariota is actually not playing poorly for you, considering what he's being asked to do. And I think that is the disconnect for fans between what Marcus Mariota is being asked to do and what they are hoping he could do. And he's doing what he's asked. It just might not be what fans want to see.
Yeah, I think that's putting it lightly, Mike. Fans want to see. Yeah, fans want to see high flying, offense, passing attack,
But
all that stuff.
Shouldn't you want to win, Aaron? Like, isn't that what you really at the end of the day should want?
Yeah, I think so. But we'll see if this team can give the people what they want. I don't know.
You can't always get what you want. We're just in a musical bent today. But you should want wins. This team is still, listen, all its warts, all its flaws, they're in first place at 4-4.
Absolutely.
In a very flawed division, right? Tampa's probably the best overall like roster in this division.
Yeah.
But there are clearly things going on there on multiple levels. New Orleans is probably the second most talented roster in this division, but they have quarterback issues. Like you have quarterback issues. You're complaining about your quarterback in Atlanta. Would you rather have the Jameis Dalton experience? Like I combined them into one. Like, do you really want that based off of what we've seen so far this year? I don't know. And Andy Dalton doesn't really fit what Arthur Smith would want as a quarterback anyway. Yeah. Jameis might, but even that might be a little bit tricky. And then Carolina, well, I mean, PJ Walker's fine, but we'll see how long that lasts. Like, and that team's, that team's in transition. So to me, I look at it, I'm like, well, I think the Falcons are actually in a fairly stable spot, which is also not a bad place to be.
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk a little bit more about other areas of growth that we saw from this Falcons team on Sunday. We'll get into that here to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. And before we get there, guys, I got to tell you about BetOnline, the #1 source for your football betting needs and info this season. From the latest player developments, matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, and analysis of every game from the pro to the college level, BetOnline has you covered. And this weekend, they got you covered with the Falcons-Chargers line. The Falcons are 3-point underdogs at home against the Chargers. I have the suspicion that this will be the last game that we see the Falcons as the underdogs for a good little while as this rest of the season unfolds. And if you want to take advantage of that, head on over to BetOnline, your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live in-game betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there, not just NFL, but you got NBA, college football, MMA, boxing, golf, World Cup. Head to the website today at betonline.net. Use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So wrapping up today's Locked On Falcons here with Mike Rothstein. And I want to let you guys know that you should check out Locked On Sports Atlanta app now on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Download Locked On Sports Atlanta app to get that 24/7 great local coverage on Amazon Fire TV and Roku. So with Mike Rothstein, last question I have for you, Mike. We talked a little bit about the progress Marcus Mariota showed on Sunday. Is there other progress that you saw from this football team? Is there strides that maybe the defense made or other areas that you're seeing progress made for this football team?
I sigh because defensively it's tough to say right now because of just how banged up they are in the secondary. I think that you can feel a little bit better about the depth in your secondary now because I thought Cornell Armstrong had a very good game. 3 pass breakups, a couple in the end zone. Like that'll do it for you, right? Especially because in the end zone, that's more on you. It's not necessarily a coverage breaking down. And, if the pass rush isn't getting home, I don't care what the name is on the back of your jersey, whether it's Jalen Ramsey or, the 4th string guy. If you're being asked to cover for more than 4 seconds, you're probably in trouble as a defense. So I thought there was some strides there by Cornell Armstrong. So the depth in the secondary. The running game, it looks like no matter who you put back there, it's going to be successful. I mean, Caleb Huntley is really starting to emerge, and I think it's a really interesting problem that the Falcons are going to have when Cordero Patterson comes back, because it seems like he's super close. Well, he's eligible to come off injured reserve this week. We'll see if he starts to practice this week. But what do you do if you're the Falcons at that point? Because you're only going to have so many carries to go around. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see more of Cordero Patterson lined up a little bit of everywhere like we did last year, because you have a little bit more sustenance in your running game. But if you're Arthur Smith, who are you picking as your runner? As your kind of number two to Patterson? Are you picking Huntley or are you picking Algier? That's a tough question, I think, right now, because of the way both of them are running. And I don't know the answer to that question. And you got to figure Avery Williams gets worked in there as well, because all that guy does is, show up here and there and make plays. So I think that we've seen progress in their run game and the fact that they have a good run plan. And it would be remiss to not mention Kyle Pitts, because, hey, look what happens. They throw the ball and Kyle Pitts gets 9 targets. And he has a touchdown and 80 yards. And I'm sure for some people that's still not enough. I'm sure it's not. And yes, they didn't really get the ball to Drake London until late. And understand, we know they threw the ball more, and this is not an offense to me that is going to sustain multiple high-level weapons on a week-to-week basis. But you saw that they can get him involved in the offense. So I think that's, again, signs of progress. I have concerns about their offensive line pass protecting. I have concerns about their defense getting home on pass rush, although I think Rashaan Evans did a really good job there on a critical third down. And most importantly, and I wrote about it after the game as well, their third down defense is bad, because it's not only they're not getting off the field, but that against the Panthers when they gave up explosive play after explosive play, Aaron. And that, I think, if we're talking about the difference between this team maybe being able to make a run against a schedule that's fairly favorable for them, with only 2 teams right now over 500 left on their schedule as of today, it is very simply there. They have to get off the field. If they can't fix their third down defense and they can't fix giving up explosives on third down, well, that's cool. But you're also going to be watching the playoffs in a very winnable division.
Yeah, I think they went into the week, and I'm guessing they came out of the week also in last place in third down efficiency on defense. So
I would imagine that they did, as they gave up almost 50% of the third downs again. But it wasn't even like they gave it up, Aaron, right? Because Team P has been talking a lot about, we got to be better on first and second down to make sure it's not third and short, because that's where you're getting hurt. That wasn't the case yesterday. Yesterday it was, look, it's 3rd and 8. Cool. DJ Moore is going to get like a 20-yard gain. I mean, it was happening in critical moments too. Now, theoretically, that should get shorn up a little bit whenever Jalen Hawkins and AJ Terrell get back. But still, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, definitely. Mike, I really appreciate you providing your insight on today's episode, given that both of us are a little deficient on our caffeine intake. So I really appreciate you being able to hold your own on this one, but let the people know where they can find your stuff and what you got coming up for them.
Yeah, sure. I am on Twitter below. You can see my little Twitter handle. That's also my Instagram handle. Not a member of Twitter Blue just yet. We'll see what happens there. But you can follow me on TikTok at Mike Rothstein Sports. Of course, listen to my podcast, From the Perch. We drop episodes on Monday and on Thursday, and we are not going to infringe on the daily podcasting days that are Aaron Freeman and Locked On Falcons, at least not till next training camp. And then obviously read all of my stuff at ESPN.com and occasionally hear me on ESPN radio here and there, which is where I was from 9 to 1 last night, talking actually a decent amount about the Falcons-Panthers craziness. By the way, Aaron, that was, I think, the 3rd craziest football game I've covered in my career. That wasn't even 1. That was like 3.
All right. Well, we'll have to have you back on in the future to talk about the top 2.
No problem. Not been a Falcons game yet, but the way things are going and the way my career is, man, it could be pretty close.
All right, man. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anytime.
All right, guys, that wraps up today's episode. Thanks, Mike Rothstein, once again for joining me. Tomorrow's episode will be an all 22 review and Q&A. That's an opportunity for you guys to kind of steer the conversation here on the podcast from the film breakdowns and other general topics that you want me to get into. One I know that I will get into on tomorrow's episode because this question has already been submitted, first come, first serve type of situation. The higher your chances of getting your questions answered on the podcast. But this one was on the idea of what's the biggest surprise, what's maybe the biggest disappointment that I've had so far this year. And spoiler alert, I'll probably use the run blocking as my biggest surprise of the year. And that will give us an opportunity to talk about this offensive line. And my disappointment may be the coverage. And we'll talk about why that is. And I don't know if it's going to be the cornerbacks, but we'll get into that on tomorrow's episode. Of course, make sure you provide your feedback or submit your questions to Locked On Falcons on Twitter and Facebook, lockedonfalcons@mail.com. That's the email address if you want to leave a comment here on the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel. And of course, you can jump in the Discord. Locked On Falcons is the place there. There's a link in the description below. The previous question about biggest surprise and biggest disappointment came from a Discord user that I'm blanking on the name as we speak right now. But that will do it for us guys here on today's Locked On Falcons. Again, thank you, Mike Rothstein. And we thank you guys for making Locked On Falcons your first listen. Check out Locked On Sports Atlanta, Locked On Hawks, Locked On Bulldogs, Locked On Braves. Yes. Is there one more team? Just, we don't have Locked On United quite yet, I don't think. But I had to double check. But in addition to all those first listens and second listens, why not also make Locked On Sports today your second listen from the games that matter to the biggest stories in all of sports? Go beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes with the local experts that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports today, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Guys, really appreciate it. Till then.